Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, my fine friends. Welcome to episode 19 of season 14 of the Tom Petty Project podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Brown, and this is the only weekly podcast that digs into the entire Tom Petty catalogue, song by song, album by album, and includes conversations with musicians, fans, and people connected with Tom along the way. Okay, another slight distraction this week. One thing I haven't done much on the show yet is talk about the artwork from Tom's albums. A while ago, I did put a Facebook poll up and we sort of figured out, who everyone, or which album cover everyone thought was the strongest in Tom's catalogue, and it ended up being Wildflowers. But this season, we're covering an album that features the artwork, or features an artwork that I would consider to be in that argument for the best in his catalogue. It was commissioned specifically by Tom and his wife, Dana, who were collectors of the artist's work. So what I wanted to do is give you some background on that artist, Robert Deyber, and then give you my interpretation of the album cover itself. Now, this is not meant to be an extensive biography, but a primer for those of you who aren't aware of his work. Before we get into it, I wanted to give a quick trigger warning too, as the topic of suicide features heavily toward the end of the episode. Robert Deyber's decision to end his life is a keen reminder that we often don't know the pain, physical and or psychological, that so many people endure on a day-to-day basis without any of us ever knowing. And while the right to choose the manner and time of one's own death is, to me, a fundamental human right, for a lot of people, it is the culmination of a set of circumstances that they feel they cannot escape and becomes the only solution they see. So if you are struggling with depression or especially suicidal thoughts, please reach out to someone. If you have no one close to you who you feel comfortable confiding in, there are a great many services out there that you can access for free, and I've left a link and a phone number for the Samaritans in the episode notes should you have need of them. Robert Donald Deyber Jr., known to his friends as Bob, was born on August 13, 1955 in Greenwich, Connecticut. His mother, Janice Deyber, was a portrait painter and former fashion model who introduced him to art at an early age. She died when Robert was only 16, a loss that profoundly affected him. His father, Robert Deyber Sr., had survived the infamous Bataan Death March during World War II before becoming a real estate broker. And Deyber later described art as both a refuge and an escape. As a child, he imagined fantastical landscapes and worlds far removed from his everyday surroundings, an imaginative tendency that became the foundation of his mature work. In a 2018 interview with Artsy.net, he was asked to describe his profession in 5 words. I think his response sums up so much about him. He said, and I quote, "The quest to move someone emotionally." Oh, that's 6 words. Deyber's creative inspiration and most unique attribute was his gleeful love of the English language, particularly cliches, idioms, puns, and euphemisms. Think of him as the visual art world's version of Lewis Carroll, with stylistic similarities to Dalí and a humour akin to Mark Twain and Groucho Marx. Take, for example, his interpretation of the phrase bad hair day. Deyber takes the word hair in the lagomorphic sense and paints a picture of a hare, H-A-R-E, in the foreground with a lip match in its mouth, against a backdrop of burning buildings. The hair is almost photorealistic until you look at the feet, and the buildings themselves have a more cartoonish appearance, and the whole is rendered against a very simple ground and sky. All the elements that make Deyber's work striking, and they're all encompassed in this image. Unlike many successful painters, Deyber did not receive extensive formal artistic training. In a 2009 interview with the Bellevue Reporter, he explains, "I hesitated to learn to paint under the direction of someone else because I always feared I would adapt their style and lose the very thing that defined who I was as an artist." For a time, Deyber worked for a Boston tour company that sent him to Italy for a year, and he became immersed in Renaissance art while living there. But, like Tom Petty, Robert Deyber never parroted back his influences in simplistic regurgitation. Rather, he absorbed them into his creative whole and created a new way of expressing language through art. We obviously hear the influences of Chuck Berry, Muddy Waters and Bo Diddley in Tom's music, but it never feels parodic or cliched. In the same way, critics have noted influences ranging from Dalí to Magritte to Warhol in the work of Robert Deyber, and yet his work does not look like any of those artists, really. Often described as a visual raconteur and a pop surrealist, Deyber's art instead occupies a unique space between sincerity and irony. Throughout his life, Deyber battled a host of physical and mental health issues, and he told the Bellevue Reporter, "I've been diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. Instead of limiting me, the disorder has benefited me in regard to my art and the development of my paintings. I paint in acrylic because it's a very fast-paced medium. I've managed to take something that some might consider limiting and instead turned it into a positive force in my life." And then in an interview with Unlocking Connecticut, Deyber said, "I get a lot of my ideas in the middle of the night. It's crazy. For any title, I sometimes come up with 20 different versions of one title. Or I'll make up my own titles. I'll take phrases and change them to suit my needs. The one that jumps to mind is the phrase, 'the right to bear arms.' Well, I changed it to 'the right to arm bears.' That kind of thing." This mile-a-minute thought process was matched by an extraordinarily prolific work ethic. Contemporary profiles estimate that Deyber produced somewhere between 150 and 200 paintings per year. This results in a creative life that could be described alternately as obsessive or singularly focused. One would describe Beethoven and Mozart in much the same way. For many years, though, Deyber was not a full-time artist. Instead, he built a successful career in the travel and airline industries, rising through airline sales while painting during his free time. This career enabled him to travel extensively throughout Europe, Asia, and North America, visiting museums and absorbing artistic influences from around the world. During evenings and weekends, he continued painting, exhibiting throughout the Boston area for nearly 2 decades before eventually leaving the airline business in 2001 to pursue art full-time. After the airline industry contracted following 9/11, Deyber and his partner Robert Graham moved to Georgia and opened a contemporary art gallery, Iridium Gallery, in Roswell in 2005 or 2006. I couldn't find an exact date for that. Deyber continued painting while Graham helped promote the work. Around the same time, Deyber exhibited at the New York Art Expo and was discovered by David Rogath, leading to his association with Martin Lawrence Galleries, a relationship that would bear commercially and critically successful fruit right up until Deyber's death. This timeline, of course, lines up with the release of Highway Companion, and Deyber tells Unlocking Connecticut, "I was doing fine on my own, selling for my own website privately, and right at the same time, Tom Petty contacted me and told me he'd secretly been collecting my work and wanted me to design an album cover for him. He and his wife have 6 paintings or so." In the Bellevue Reporter interview, he adds, "People like to interact with the artist of the work they fell in love with. It's important to find out what drives the creativity that is the artist." And I, obviously, and like most of you, I really relate to this completely, especially as someone who has dedicated almost 5 years of their life to breaking down Tom's creative output. So let's talk about the cover to Highway Companion. The first thing I should say is that I have no background in art criticism, so I'm flying by the seat of my pants here, but I do believe that art is about interpretation, and I've talked about that lots on this podcast, that the listener is the one who determines the meaning of the song, at least to them. So hopefully my interpretation of the composition of this piece rings true for some of you. Now, the image is striking for many reasons. First of all, you have a quintessentially Deyber setting, a desert or a barren landscape dotted with 12 trees of varying sizes. 12 trees for 12 tracks on the album. Very nice little detail. The sky is also highly representative of Deyber's work, being lightly textured blue with white cloud accents. Now, there's a great video online of the artist creating one of these backgrounds, and I'll place a link in the episode notes to this. It shows Robert painting with large brushes, and in the Artsy.net interview, he's asked what the most indispensable item in his studio is, and he answers, "My 5 giant north-facing windows and my 4-inch wide house painting brushes." This technique is central to so much of Deyber's work that the landscape itself is very stark and uncluttered, and two-tone, as with most of Deyber's paintings. So I'm really curious about one aspect of this piece that I couldn't find any answers for. This may be one for Dana Petty, and maybe I'll ask on the Tom Petty Nation Facebook page just to see how this came about. Because the back cover of Highway Companion is the same as the front, without the rocket, the astronaut, and the monkey. It's definitely exactly the same painting, though it's slightly moved in framing. So I would speculate that Deyber first created the landscape, this was then photographed for use on the reverse of the album, then the detail on the front cover was added. This detail is the iconic view of an astronaut holding a monkey's hand and looking at a large space rocket. So while this isn't It's not exactly the same type of visual representation of a pun or an idiom that Deyber was famous for. There are direct symbolic links to the album and the themes running through it. Rather than a literal highway, in my reading, there's a subtle play on words here. High can be interpreted in the vertical sense. The rocket reaches high into the sky and beyond, where it travels the endless interstellar highway. It's the ultimate journey, isn't it? The final frontier. So the astronaut is easily analogous to Tom himself. He's the one who's going to be the primary navigator on this journey. And it's interesting that he's framed off-center in the image. It gives a slight sense that while he's going to be guiding the vehicle itself, or the properties of the vehicle itself, may influence what path the journey takes. As with all art, the artist is often guided by the art itself, only finding its final form after spending a significant amount of time with it. It's also striking that, compositionally, the astronaut is looking at the rocket from a distance. The journey hasn't yet begun, so there's that suggestion of the anticipation of the journey being important. And these threads run through the songs on Highway Companion. As well as the stories being told, there's that meta undercurrent of the journey through the songs, revealing Tom to himself. As Tom tells Paul Zollo concerning the inspiration behind the song Down South, what would I write now? Now that I've been gone so long, what if I went back? What would be my impressions? As the astronaut has not yet begun his journey, that sense of wondering is preserved in this still image. Holding the hand of the astronaut is the monkey, but he's smaller and reaching up, and clearly this is not an equal relationship. The astronaut may have an affectionate, even emotionally dependent relationship with the monkey, but he knows he'll be taking this journey alone in all practical and intellectual senses. And this mirrors what I said in the intro to this season. Highway Companion stands, in my mind, as the only work in Tom's catalogue that is a true solo effort. He didn't collaborate with anyone in the songwriting aspect at all. And though we know that Mike Campbell and Jeff Lynne were the two primary collaborators, neither get songwriting credits or neither contributed significantly to that element of the writing of this album. So, again, it's the only true solo record in Tom's catalogue, if you want to think about it in that way. So the last detail I find interesting is the way the shadows were arranged left to right. You could make them off at an angle, you could make them right to left. There's no end of ways that you could put those shadows. You could make them coming towards the astronaut. But the sun rises in the west, and it maybe casts that shadow. So maybe this is, again, if the sun is just rising, it's the start of a journey. It's the early in the morning. And maybe also it's a metaphorical nod to being an adopted Californian, West Coast. There's also a linguistic connection with both Tom and Robert being huge fans of language. Our Western style is to write from left to right. So the movement of the piece is given in that direction. There's no other kinetic element to the drawing, as all the other elements are stationary. So those shadows give a subtle sense of motion to an otherwise static image. Robert Deyber never became a household name in the manner of Dalí or Warhol, but within contemporary gallery circles, he developed an exceptionally loyal following who appreciated that his paintings were technically accomplished, but immediately understandable and humorous without ever being superficial. Thousands of private collectors acquired his paintings and limited editions, including other notable figures from the entertainment industry. Now, some observers may regard the work as more illustrative than conceptually radical, but even those assessments generally acknowledge the originality of his central idea, building an entire artistic vocabulary from everyday language. While many contemporary surrealists emphasize bizarre imagery for its own sake, Deyber grounded his imagination in expressions people already knew, making his paintings unusually approachable. Robert Deyber died by suicide on September 20th, 2021 at the age of 66. The following day, his bereaved husband, Robert Graham, shared his final written words that he wished to be shared with the world. Deyber wrote, "Dear family and friends, those of you who know me well know that over the past 45 years I've existed with severe nerve pain, mostly attributed to my scoliosis. I held on as long as I could. Living with constant pain has caused me to have serious bouts of depression, which I can no longer tolerate. Adding to the pain has been 40 years of extreme anxiety, perhaps related to the pain. Every day was a panic attack. I tried many medications to no effect. In order to control the pain, I had resorted to opioid pain medications, which only made the situation worse. They did little to limit my agony. The last straw was contracting diabetes brought on by 30 years of corticosteroids, another attempt to control the pain. At this point, I am completely wrung out. I've gone as far as I can go. The last year has been hell. My best friend Peter died a year ago. My dear brother-in-law Greg died as well. It went downhill from there. I'm sorry I have to leave this way, but there are limitations to what the human body can withstand. I have had an amazing life. I've travelled all over the world, and I've made some pretty decent art. Rob took great care of me for 20 years. I've had a great life. I've been planning this for a long time. I love each and every one of you and wish I could give each of you a hug goodbye. Perhaps we'll see each other on the other side, and I'll hug you then. Love, always and forever, Bob. Okay, Pettyheads, that's it for this week. A rather sad end to the episode, but I think that letter does show that, as well as being a singularly brilliant artist, Robert Deyber was also a man who knew his own mind and was firm in his decisions. His husband Rob was clearly a very supportive, loving partner, and though it must have been incredibly difficult to accept his decision, he did so with grace and humility. In the Artsy.net interview, when asked who inspired him most in his life, Deyber responds, "My partner and husband Rob. It is true that opposites attract. He keeps me grounded by his calmness, especially helpful when I'm about to snap. He's very patient with my particular brand of crazy." Robert Deyber lived a full, fulfilling creative life. His work will always have tremendous significance to so many people, and in the Pettyhead community, we'll always cherish the fact that he joined Tom as a companion on the artistic highway, if only for a brief, brief moment. The Tom Petty Project is a proud member of the Boneless Podcasting Network, which is a loose collective of podcasting friends and acquaintances brought together and championed by the inimitable Chaz Charles. Go check out the roster by clicking on the link in the episode notes, where you will also find my other podcasts, Seaside Pod Review, a Queen podcast that I co-host with my very best friend Randy Woods, who performs all the music you hear in this podcast. You can also check out the Ultimate Catalog Clash that I co-host with my very good friend Corey Morissette. We just put out a different episode this week, diving into each other's vinyl record collections. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and YouTube at The Tom Petty Project, and on Blue Sky at Tom Petty Project. Go follow, like, subscribe as applicable, and again, please leave a review or a rating if you haven't already. Keep talking to me on social media, and I'll keep reading out your comments on the show. And as your weekly reminder, The Tom Petty Project is not affiliated with the Tom Petty Estate in any way. So when you're looking for Tom's music, please visit official streaming platforms, or better yet, go to your local independent record seller, grab some physical media. If you're looking for official merchandise, go to store.tompetty.com. And if you're looking for merch for this show, please go to store.tompettyproject.com. Don't forget to check out the Tom Petty Nation and Tom Petty Fans Forever groups on Facebook. And make sure you're listening to Tom Petty Radio on Channel 31 on Sirius XM. Until we meet again next week, keep listening to and sharing Tom's music. Try to be kind. Try to say I love you to someone at least once a day. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll be back with you next week to talk some more about Tom Petty. Bye-bye.